Good morning and welcome to SFHA's webinar on creating a learning and innovative culture. My name is Lorna Wilson. I'm the Head of Policy and Innovation at SFHA, and a very warm welcome to you this morning. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, it's great to have you. And as always, with all of our webinars, the recording of the webinar will be available on our website, along with the slides from today's session. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. You'll notice a bar at the bottom of your screen. So we won't be using audio today with the participants. However, we are very keen for you to be involved. There's a Q&A section at the bottom which you'll see. So please use that to put any questions that you have for our speaker today. You'll also notice on the control bar at the bottom there's a chat function, so please feel free to use that if you want to share any observations or thoughts with other attendees, but don't use it for questions. So we would like you to use the Q&A for your questions, and we'll look at these as part of the session. So I'm delighted to welcome our speaker this morning, Mark Brown from the Dolphin Index. So Mark, welcome, and would you like to tell us just a little bit about yourself, Mark?
Lorna, thank you very much indeed for the invitation to be with you all today, and thank you to Karen, Cassandra, Sally, Thomas, Molly, and all of you star dolphins at SFHA. I am, in my own words, the dinosaur, and I use that expression because I realize just how often I get set in my ways. My wife pointed out some flowers in the sitting room the other day and said, haven't those lasted well? And I realized I'd never noticed them in the first place, showing that I spend a lot of my time being a slumbering dinosaur. By background, I have qualifications in law, psychology, and PwC funded my visiting professorship at Henley Business School for a number of years. And I'm particularly interested in how you nurture the open and creative mind, team, organizations, so ones that learn well and remain innovative. I've written some books, I make videos, and more recently we've developed the Dolphin Index to try and bring some science to the question of how do you make a brilliant organizational culture. And my long-term aspiration is, like your viewers who are already dolphins, because they're not set in their ways, my long-term aspiration is to be a dolphin, not a dinosaur.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. So Mark, you've a subtitle for this webinar, which is Housing Associations Now Scotland's Preferred Employer. So whilst I agree housing associations are fantastic employers, that might be a bit of a stretch.
Well, I hope to suggest three what might initially seem to be possibly audacious ideas. The first is going to be that the Scottish housing sector can become the preferred employer by 2024, and I think already in many ways we're en route to doing that. I'm going to suggest a second idea around how we can accelerate the rate of learning within the sector. And the third potentially outrageous idea I'm going to suggest is that we can in fact enhance the innovation in the sector by linking all minds within the sector to be more innovative. So rather than just creating a learning and innovative culture in a crisis, I hope to be able to argue that we can create a permanent learning and innovative culture in a crisis. But to really answer your question, I'm going to have to get into the presentation itself. So, do those slides come up all right? Lorna, are those slides showing all right?
So we're seeing you just now, Mark.
Okay, so how do I just get back to the...
Lovely. If you click share screen on your taskbar, Mark, and then it should take you, you'll see the thumbnails of your presentation, and click on that, and that means you can share your screen.
So dinosaur in all ways, including the digital dinosaur, tried to become dolphin.
Perfect.
Is that now working?
Absolutely. So just click play from start and we're good to go.
So the housing associations, now Scotland's preferred employer. Seems initially audacious. My assumption is that if you're taking part in this exciting webinar, you are the dolphins that are going to accelerate this shift. And I need your help to join in the journey because I'm a bit of a dinosaur stuck in my ways. And just to illustrate how easily I've become stuck in my ways, I'll just use a few mind teasers. And you'll probably remember this one, which when I first came across it, I could not solve it. And you remember the challenge, you're given six matchsticks, and how do you create 4 equilateral triangles, where the side of each triangle is the length of a match. And I played and played around it for some time, because as a student, you played around with these types of puzzles on a table. And as soon as you say the word on a table, you realize or I'd been locked into the dominant logic or mindset, which is working 2-dimensionally. And as many of you have already guessed, in fact, the answer could be achieved by moving into the 3rd dimension and creating three triangles on the side and 1 at the base. But it's always a good reminder to me of how easily I get set in my ways. There are 3 points I'd really like to make today. And the first is, in terms of getting unset or knocked out of my normal way of thinking, I think the horrid virus, tragic as it has been, has also seen some remarkably good things happen as well. Because dinosaurs like me suddenly wake up and say, my goodness me, the government has got money to solve these problems. We can get homelessness people off the streets. And very often at times of crisis, like after the First World War, we saw women getting the vote. After the Second World War, we saw the birth of the NHS. This horrible crisis does create an opportunity where I think we realize we can change things, we can rewrite or create a new story. And most people I meet in the housing sector are already up for this story of a kinder world. And we've seen so many acts of kindness and bravery during the period of the virus. We want a more equitable world. For example, in Scotland, I'm twice as likely to die from the virus if I'm living in one of the poorer areas compared to one of the wealthier areas. That's something we need to solve. We know that we've got to deal with the green issue. We've got to stop the planet burning, the planet scorching. We've got to reduce planet warming. And we know a problem with that is that it's not immediately in my face. So often we respond to crises where there's something ghastly happening right in front of my eyes. So for example, I was reminded the other day that 22,000 people, UNICEF think, die every day in the world from poverty. And that's just not sufficiently in my face, so I sort of don't notice it. So the new story, I believe, is one where we can create a kinder, more equitable, greener, one Scotland. And by one, I mean, we want to break down the old tribes. You very often see silos in organizations which behave like tribes, but very often you get tribes within countries, and we tend to get tribes between countries. We've seen this huge increase in xenophobia with different countries blaming each other. We do want a kinder, more equitable, greener, one Scotland and one world. And the choice is, or I go back to sleep. And you'll see on the cover of the book, you, the dolphins, are that person wearing the red tie at the front. You're awake. We've got to try and keep me, Mark, the dinosaur, from slumbering back to sleep. Okay, so what I've suggested is the crisis creates a window of opportunity. But very often that opportunity window closes after a few months. We go back to the normal way of doing things. I go back into slumberland. I go back into the dominant logic. I become a bit unconscious. I lose that freshness of mind. But this time, we're talking about everybody listening to this webinar, let's keep this window open. Let's actually make it forever a larger and larger window, and let's challenge the dominant logic. Let's challenge the mindsets of our colleagues by being positively unreasonable. And you remember this quote from Bernard Shaw: the reasonable woman adapts themselves to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to themselves. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable woman or man. And here I'm not talking about dolphins being a pain in the ass going around telling Mark that he's a dinosaur, because we have to be psychologically smart. We have to win over everybody in our organizations to realize we don't have to do it as we've always done it. We can challenge the hidden mindsets. We can find ways of providing more caring, more cost-effective service. We can become the preferred employer in Scotland. But we're going to have to go around challenging in a charming way, in an engaging way, in a persuasive way, so as not to be seen as mere pains. So, nice aspiration. Let's actually be a little more practical. And just to get us going, again, to show Mark's tendency to be a dinosaur, I'm back in the rut again. And I remember this one, which sent me absolutely crazy. You know the old expression, time flies. And I thought, yeah, so what? We know the expression. And then I was given a second sentence, time flies, you can't. And I'm going, what are you talking about? Time flies, you can't. And then the third part of the sentence, time flies, you can't, they travel too fast. And the dinosaur here is really confused because I can't make sense of that sentence because I'm locked into the logic of the first part of the sentence. And the great thing about dominant logic is that very often it's invisible. I don't even realize that my assumptions are deeply driving my thinking about the way I'm making sense of this. But as soon as I saw this image, the idea of getting a fly and saying, on your marks, get set, go, with a stopwatch, and saying, oh, it's now reached 3 meters away, that would be time flies, you can, well, you can't because they travel too fast. But suddenly the sentence makes sense. Yet again, Mark the dinosaur. First practical step for how we become persuasively unreasonable, kindly unreasonable dolphin accelerators. And the first is what we're calling the big learn. Every housing association in Scotland, in the UK, in the world, some are doing things better than others. So the question is, for the big learn, can we amplify and accelerate that learning? So just before I go deeper into the slide, let's just go over to Karen. I think she's going to show us a quick poll about the big learn, where you see on your screen now, if we learn what each housing association does better than everyone else and embed that learning in all Scottish housing associations members, will we be as a sector no better, a bit better, a lot better, hugely better? If you could just kindly click on the level that you think best describes what will happen if we can accelerate and share everybody's best and new practice. So, assuming the lively dolphins are there, if you'd like to click away in the next 30 seconds, that will be fantastic. The dolphins are either hesitating or being shy. At this point, we're getting no scores that I can see. Karen, are you seeing scores your end?
Yes, I am, and I'll end the poll so you can see the results, Mark.
Oh, great, great. So, what a fantastic result. So we recognize that there are different housing associations who are doing really smart things. And if we shared that, I mean, for example, if you take Aberdeen, say they're doing something fantastic around antisocial behavior, let's learn what they're doing and share it faster. If Cairn Housing is doing something really smart about arrears and bringing them down, again, let's share. if Fife is doing something really smart about trades getting it right first time, if Gardein Housing has a particular reputation for keeping costs down, and let's take the last example, say West Highlands Housing Association, Oban, let's say they're doing something really fabulous about customer and colleague delight. Again, let's learn and share. So how can we do that? Well, very simply, our suggestion is we measure, as we've been doing in different parts of the UK, how great a culture you've got. That's using what I call the Dolphin Index, which measures how engaged, creative, innovative, customer caring you are. But obviously we must get hard metrics as well, like how many jobs do we get right first time? What are overheads as a percentage or proportion of turnover? What are the levels of arrears? What levels of customer satisfaction? So we'll get all this data with the help of you, the chief exec, every individual in the organization. And then we'll try and work out what it is about the high scorers that they're doing compared to those like me scoring less well. And then we'll look to implement these new and best practices, doing what I nicknamed the Dolphin Shift. And then we'll share everything that seems to work with the whole of the Scottish sector. That's going to be fantastic because we can then measure again, we can then learn further, and then again, we can implement, share, lift, and shift, and so on. So to do this, SFHA is going to be getting in touch with each and every housing association saying, do you want to take part in this accelerated Dolphin journey where we speed up the rate of learning? Just a quick bit of background so this really makes sense. Being a dinosaur, I wrote my autobiography a few years ago. In fact, I did it overlooking the Isles of Jura and Islay and Gir, because I used to live for part of the year in Argyll and more recently in Moray. And in the dinosaur strain, I suggested you can spot dinosaurs like me, and you'll recognize me probably as being somebody perhaps in your organization, but we'll take it to me. Dinosaurs are psychologically retired. The body arrives at work, but the heart doesn't come to. I tend to have 10 years to go tattooed on my forehead and tombstones in my eyes. And you'll know if I'm a dinosaur because very often I'm damned arrogant. I'm thinking of some of the banks recently. It took me 5 weeks and 6 days to get through to my bank to talk to the right person. What a dinosaur. In fact, they even sent me a note and gave me some compensation for saying how shambolic they were. And you can very often spot the dinosaur because they're brilliant at always yes-butting the new. So dinosaurs like me are brilliant at idea assassination. And you can lastly spot the dinosaur because they have that sort of depressed sense of there's nothing I can do to make things better. It's their fault, it's the system, it's health and safety, it's the rules, it's the regulator. So where would we put me on that scale? Now, clearly I'm down the dinosaur end and you're up the dolphin end. And the question is, how can we now shift the whole sector? How can we accelerate the learning journey you're on? And in the last few years, we thought probably there are 5 things you find in really dolphin organizations. And these are 5 things we hope to measure in Scotland. But just to introduce, the Dolphin Index assesses how innovative your culture is, and the Dolphin Shift is about helping create a more brilliant culture where individuals have brilliant lives. We're going to be dead a very long time, who on their deathbed is heard to say, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. We deserve to have brilliant lives at work. Let's drive brilliant organizations, and we have already a brilliant Scotland. Can we make it even more brilliant? And to do that, we need me, the dinosaur, to shift out of my slumber and to be on fire, to be crazy about work and not crazy because of work. Because we're going to have lots of new problems coming up with increased arrears. For example, I noticed in the press today, in the UK, arrears are up 100 million since the virus outbreak. We're going to need huge creativity to deal with problems like that. We're going to need huge creativity to deal with the greater levels of unemployment. We need huge creativity to deal with the new builds that we're doing and the refurbs so as to reduce CO2 levels. And that's going to require lots of creativity, But that's, if you like, inspiration and perspiration. We need to be able to can do, we need to be able to can learn. We need what I privately call a rubber arse. That is, when I get knocked over, I bounce back time and time and time again. Because when you look at the resilient organization, it has this engaged, creative, rubber arse culture where people constantly bounce back and try again. All in pursuit, obviously, of delighting the tenant, the customer, but also delighting your own colleagues. And we must never forget, we must delight the finance director. She or he needs to keep smiling, otherwise we won't have a business at all. And we also need to make sure that Michael Cameron, the housing regulator, is smiling too, otherwise we'll get downrated, and that's not good to do. So we really have to bear all those stakeholders in mind. And one reason why I love your sector is the fifth C, more and more businesses around the world, be they public, charitable, or private sector, are realizing they want to be a force for good in the world and not just mere dosh-making machines. And your sector, of course, has always been, because it's got a social purpose, has always been more committed to being conscious, kind, caring, and so on. Okay, so that's what my brother would call a Parker theory. My nickname's Parker, and throughout my life, my brother's always said I've had lots of Parker theories. So this quote brings me down to earth. By the way, my brother is on the board of one of the very large housing associations where he looks after governance and risk, and he's the sensible one. And I realized that by combining his mind with my mind, we might actually run a not bad organization. But the important point is those are just theories, and we need data. We need data to see who are the high performers and what story are they living. So as I said, we're going to assess everybody who wants to take part in this Dolphin journey on the Dolphin Index, which has 14 dimensions, and just very briefly, commitment, how in love with your job you are, freedom, how empowered are you, idea support, is it a yes-anding culture, or do people yes but you? Is it a positive culture? Would you, if you could, give people a metaphorical or actual hug? But of course, we have to keep a cow or 3 meters, 2 meters between us. Is it a dynamic, lively place? Is it fun? Is it lively? Are there lots of ideas, idea proliferation? I'm going to skip stress at this point. Do we make sure we get good risk and avoid bad risk? We must never get another Grenfell. We never want another Cosmopolitan, which got into financial trouble. Do we have enough time for ideas? Something the sector very often says it doesn't have. We're too busy doing the day job. Do we all have a shared view of where we're trying to get to? Are we paid reasonably? And do people say thank you, as in work recognition, for good and creative work? The more you score above the red line, and the red line currently shows the UK norm, the more innovative and creative and caring people are saying your culture is. But on stress, the Dolphins are usually scoring at the UK norm or below. And you may remember back in 2015, Inside Housing invited us to profile the UK sector. And here's just a flavor of some of the dolphins and dinosaurs from that time. And you notice, for example, the outer blue line is very dolphin-esque. So what are they doing? We know they have a charismatic CEO, but is that all it is? Or will the culture live on when he leaves? Look at that in a red line. Now this looks like an organization where the HR function has been recruited by the devil. It looks an awful place to work. But when I meet those HR people, I find in fact they're dolphins, and they're desperately trying to shift the culture, which is fantastic. But we're trying to work out where the dolphins score and to make sure that those dolphin scores do correlate with the hard metrics. Very simply, just to summarize that slide, you can plot all that information on a 2x2. On the vertical axis, how daring is your culture? Low, high. On the horizontal axis, how caring is your culture? Low, high. And so top left would be, yes, it's creative, but it's a cold place. Bottom right would be, it's a really friendly place, but no ideas. Bottom left would be working for an organization from hell, or you're doing it only for the dosh. The UK norm is bang in the middle where my cursor is just now. and top right is the what many people think is the ideal place to be. If you just plot those previous organizations on that slide, you see one, the little blue circle top right. That's one which is really quite extraordinary. But this one down here, we've just been involved with one organization who's going down here, the red, that within just 2, maybe 3 years have really shifted the culture, saying that you can profoundly shift the culture very quickly. The other thing I won't go into at the moment is that the Dolphin Index also picks up on how far do we delight or loathe the customer, and we also pick up on how stressed or unstressed is the organization. But you get the feel for what the Dolphin Index does. Okay, now here comes the big idea. We want each and every one to share their best practice so that we can be lighthouses to each other. But I want to go one step even more. Well, this is potentially my second unreasonable idea. Scotland needs more dosh. So we don't just want a kinder, more equitable, greener on Scotland. We want one which is more prosperous too. So what we're hoping is that if we can get housing associations in Scotland to really dance with fabulous cultures, why don't we get them sharing best and new practice, one with the public sector, other charities and so on, but also potentially to act as an accelerator for the private sector, so that if I'm running an organization, I'm a bit of an elephant, that is, I've been around for a long time and I'm not doing that particularly well, or we could do much better. Could we actually use the housing sector, which has deep purpose, if it can become more innovative, could it become, if you like, the podstaminator, the way to shift the whole of Scotland? Because we have housing associations throughout Scotland, and we can create these local Dolphin pods of best and new practice. So that's the big learn. We're going to amplify and accelerate the learning. We're going to invite you to measure yourselves on the Dolphin Index and other metrics. We're going to ask if we can interview the CEO. We're going to ask if we can do a focus group. We're then going to start learning about who's doing the good things. We're then going to look at implementing those good things. We're going to share those practices across the whole sector. We're then going to measure again. We're going to learn again and shift again. This way, we can greatly accelerate the journey that you're already on, becoming more Dolphin. But you, the people watching the video and the webinar today, you are the Dolphin accelerators. You're the first wave. You're that little wave that's going to become a huge wave that's going to create this fantastic difference across Scotland. Almost my last point. Just to remind you, the dinosaur is, as usual, asleep. I'm back in my fur-lined cozy rut. What have we got this time? Oh, yes, do I remember this one? I hated this one. The challenge is to think of a game played throughout the world begins with a T. And, you know, the dominant logic says, the mindset says, the assumptive framework says, the way we've always done this says, choose a game from one of the letters in the alphabet. So we play the alphabet mindset. We play the alphabet dominant logic. But as many of you have already guessed, probably, well, the game Scotland invented and is played throughout the world, I completely locked into the dominant logic of it had to be the alphabet as opposed to a golf T. Yet again, Mark the dinosaur. I need your help escaping my dinosaur ruts. So we're going to do the big learn. And now, the final point, we can also amplify the creativity and problem solving and innovative capacity of the sector if we can join all minds together. You know those water cooler moments where suddenly you have a bit of a eureka when you're talking to your friend Mary over a coffee, or might be at a conference. These serendipitous moments happen when minds connect, or you connect brain cells in your own mind. You say, wow, that's a good idea. Here, with the magic of Dolphin Karen, we should be able to get the second poll. So this time the question, if we can find a way to connect every Scottish housing employee's mind with every other mind in the sector, our combined imaginations, creativity, and problem-solving ability will be increased, not at all, a little, a moderate amount, a lot, a huge amount. Again, you dancing dolphins, you accelerating dolphins, let me, the dinosaur, know what you think we can achieve here. If you could click, please, the button you think. So there was a really positive feel about how far we can amplify the learning capability. This time it's how far can we amplify the imaginative capability of all dolphins in Scottish housing associations. And the magic of wow, again, what a fantastic result. Recognizing that there's so many good ideas which don't necessarily get shared. So, for example, what are you doing to drive the peak performance in trades? Let's share that. And we need to share common problems and get shared imaginations going on these problems. So fantastic result, a lot, 30%, a huge amount, 70%. So let me go back to the slides and talk about how we're going to do the big thing, because the big learn is going to happen over the next few months, depending on when the virus starts behaving in a predictable way. And then with the help of Lorna and Cassandra and her team, they'll be in touch to ask you to take part in the big learn experiment, where we're going to accelerate the learning, ideally forever. But this is something we can start straight away, the big thing. Here, we're going to say, let's amplify and accelerate the thinking by joining up everybody's minds. And we're going to join up everybody's minds, both within your own housing association, and if you like, we can join them up across housing organizations, using an incredibly simple but robust model and psychologically validated model of creative thinking, where you take the goal, for example, it might be to reduce arrears, reducing antisocial behavior. You'll then have a separate space in your computer space, your computer screen, what personally I call a EurekaNet, an SFHA, with the help of the star Dolphin Gary, have been doing a great job designing this system already, and they'll be sharing it. Then there'll be a different page in time where you can say, well, wait a minute, I ought to put on the red traffic lights here, because as the finance director, I can see that idea is going to cost me 3 million, and we don't have 3 million. So it's got to be ultimately ideas that work. So imaginative ideas that work, but most of all, turned into action. So often people have ideas, but they don't necessarily get turned into action. And very often that's sadly what happens at a lot of conferences. To be a little graphic, some people might say we get involved in acts of cerebral masturbation, where we come up with lots of ideas, but nothing actually finally gets done. Here we're talking about ideas into action that massively help the sector be extraordinary. Now here comes the wicked part. We're going to be providing tools for how you identify problems and opportunities. We're going to be providing tools for how you do the blue sky divergent bit. We're going to be providing tools for how you best analyze. We're providing tools for how you best plan, implement, see through the ideas. If you want to get on with this straight away, do please just send me an email and I'll send you a free copy of the dinosaur strain, which shows how you start your own system. I'll also send you an article about it. And by the way, if you want to start your Dolphin shift in your culture straight away, we'll send you through 100 things other housing associations are doing, all completely free of charge. Just drop me an email. So we're going to have all minds within a housing association going, identify the problem, then blue, then red, then green. Ideas, selection, action. And just imagine what's going to happen. So we begin to get the joining up of neurons in your own mind, but we also begin to get the connecting of minds with other minds in your housing association. And we then also capture all ideas. So 2 years later, I can go back and say, in the past, what have we done about voids? And there might be ideas there. And if we want to be really outrageous, which I'm hoping we are, unreasonable, because dolphins know to challenge the invisible dominant logic, rather than just relying on water cooler moments and coffee meetings at conferences, let's actually join up all housing associations in Scotland, so we can massively accelerate the speed of learning. And you've probably guessed it, because we're also talking to Holland, there is the potential whereby we can join up housing associations across different countries. The Dutch are doing really interesting things. I sometimes think of Scotland as the 5th Nordic country. I mean, the Nordics are very Dolphin. Scotland's very Dolphin. Let's share. We can share with Canada, we can share with Hong Kong, we can share with Australia. We can actually get this global brain going to magnificently accelerate the imagination of the whole sector. So hopefully the idea of we can become best in class doesn't seem too crazy, because if we do become best in class, we can provide ever better services and support for housing customers. We can enable the sector to be ever more successful. We can increase the status and importance of the sector in the government's and the public's eyes, something that's already happened because of the virus, people realizing that housing is essential. We can make the sector more attractive to work within, and we can make, for school leavers and college leavers, housing the career of enthusiastic choice. I must go and work in housing because it does something valuable, and it has a brilliant Dolphin, creative, engaging 21st century, 3rd millennium culture. And last of all, if we really do make the sector the most preferred sector in Scotland, it will be even a more brilliant place to work. So hopefully that crazy idea doesn't seem so crazy, and with your help, as the Acceleration Dolphins, we can do that. Secondly, we can do the big learn, and SFHA are going to help us do that. And lastly, we can do the big think, and SFHA are going to be sending you Gary's Dolphin work so far so that we can begin to capture and share new ideas. Lastly, of course, we know Mark is the dinosaur, and this last one really irritated me because I like to think sometimes I'm a bit Dolphin. But the challenge was, please say out loud what color is the piece of paper below. And I went, white. And what would you say? White. And the person asked the question again, what color is the piece of paper below? And I went, white. And then just to add to my frustration, they asked the question a third time, what color is the piece of paper below? And I went, white. And they then said, what do cows drink? And I said, milk. That just showed how easily I was given an instant mindset. I was grooved into the thinking. And of course, cows drink some milk, but cows more often than not drink water. And yet I was set very quickly in my ways. So imagine once I've been in an organization for months or years, I lose that fresh eye of the Dolphins. And we want to keep that freshness. We want to keep that unreasonable, kind, enthusiastic, challenging culture, which is always talking about how do we delight the customers, delight the finance director, delight the regulator, delight ourselves. How do we have brilliant organizations, brilliant lives, and create a brilliant Scotland? So what do we do now? Okay, to bring this to an end, the first thing, be even more Dolphin-esque. Let's keep the window of opportunity open. Let's actually take the sector from good to brilliant. To help us do that, with the help of SFHA and I hope the Dolphin Index and the interviews and the focus groups, we're going to do the big learn. And as soon as Top Dolphin Lorna feels that it is appropriate to do so because of how the virus is behaving and how far we're still in lockdown and so on, we will be beginning the interviews, the focus groups, and we'll be sending out the Dolphin Index. Please, please, please take part because we want you to share best and new practice. In time, of course, some of you will know about Ian Wright's wonderful magical mystery tours through the Disruptive Innovation Network. One big learn, of course, we can do straight away is going visiting other organizations because we can learn from other sectors. So the big opportunity, let's keep it. Big learn, Lorna's going to help and Cassandra's going to help. But we can start straight away with the big think. Let's now start to connect our thinking, capture the ideas, share between organizations. And if we're going to be really audacious and unreasonable, we're going to share between countries. Because what is more fundamentally important than food, shelter, and love? Really nothing. Well, health. And shelter, we're in the shelter business. You have deep purpose. And therefore, if we can combine all the minds around the world to think about creating a fabulous service for all countries, what could be more important? And take heart, because even though it's only a small number of us watching this, well, probably watching this webinar today, more people are going to see it. And you're going to talk to people. And we're going to say, have a watch of that video. Let's take part in the Dolphin Index. Let's get hold of, let's speak to Lorna at SFHA and find out how we get involved in the big learn and the big think. Let's call Mark at the Dolphin Index, and he's going to send us that free dinosaur strain and an article about how you set up blue, red, green teams and the 100 levers that we already know are having some impact in your brilliant sector and other sectors too. And this quote, I think, is just so fantastic. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed dolphins as yourselves can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. You are the accelerating dolphins. It's going to be you that can knock me out of my slumber. To get in touch, well, we know where Lorna and team are. They're at Dolphin headquarters in Glasgow. If you want to get in touch with Mark, of course, who likes to think he's the dolphin, but talk to my wife, talk to my children. During the lockdown, I've discovered she's 102% goddess, and I'm a really grumpy dinosaur at times. If you want information on the dinosaur, the articles, if you want to know more about the big learn, the big think, you get in touch with me, you get in touch with Lorna, get in touch with Cassandra, get in touch with SFHA, get in touch with Sally Thomas, and all other top dolphins at SFHA. And if my wife was here, she'd say, press the next button, you old dino, because I want to show them what you really look like. I'd say, darling Sarah, don't do that, don't do that. By the way, she has good Scottish pedigree as well, because her dad was given a rugby trial to play for Scotland. I mean, in fact, we're hoping to, I've asked for exile in Scotland, so we hope to return shortly. But here comes the self-portrait. My wife would say, this is the real Mark Brown. But again, if you'd like that information, please get in touch, SFHA, or with the Dolphin Index. Really look forward to meeting. I need you, remember, don't upset dinosaurs like me. One very private point, dinosaurs are quite often at the more senior positions in organizations because they've been around for a long time. So to be dolphin smart, we need to make sure we win the hearts and minds of top folk. And that means we don't just challenge them in an unpleasant way, we go for constructive dissent, because the dolphin shift requires psychologic and logic. We have to win hearts and minds. So make sure you don't offend me when you meet me. And together we can do that, what initially seemed potentially unreasonable. Housing associations, now Scotland's preferred employer, and we're going to create this kinder, more equitable, greener, prosperous One Scotland. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was fantastic. So your heading at the beginning, I thought you were maybe a bit crazy, but I think you've convinced me that our members can be even more extraordinary and become beacons of dolphin practice, as you describe it. We've got a couple of questions. And we do have about 5 or 10 minutes for questions. So if anybody's got a question, please feel free to pop it into the Q&A. So a couple of questions around repairs. So thinking about a radical review of repairs policy and services, and thinking, for example, about stopping doing on-demand routine repairs and switching to a 6-monthly property check, so that it would be quite a radical change in terms of services. So Mark, I don't know if you've got any thoughts in terms of that kind of thinking and how the tools that you would recommend for that, and then I can maybe say a few words around how SFHA can help to support that kind of thinking at sector-wide level.
If I just make a distinction between two types of creativity, if we take the repairs issue, there might be lots of things we can do to get it right first time and just do the one visit, whereby we take lots of small incremental steps. So baby steps, if you like, baby Dolphin. But sometimes you need big Dolphin as well, where you go for the more radical jump. And unfortunately, in many organizations, people will think when you're talking about creativity and innovation, you may just be talking about the big jump. And because I'm not a content expert, I don't, you know, the wise dolphins are in the sector. If a radical review is really going to help and is going to delight the customers, going to save costs and so on, yes, that's going to be fantastic. But do bear in mind that very often it's the small step incremental, the evolutionary creativity and the revolutionary creativity. And organizations sometimes get this mindset that everything's got to be revolution only. And I'd say the dolphins know we need evolution and revolution. So I need your subject matter experts on repairs really to tell us if a radical step at this point is the right move. But Lorna, you can probably tell me more about that than I can say.
Sure. So, so repair services, it's kind of fundamental to the role of housing associations. It's, I would say, probably the #1 driver in terms of tenant and customer satisfaction. So if we get that right, then it's kind of the basis for doing lots of other things that we want to do. And it probably is fair to say that very few associations would say that they're absolutely 100% happy with the repair service. So it's a really important service that lots of people would say they want to get better at. And I do think there's an opportunity now to rethink it. A number of our members have actually approached us to say that they are looking at the repairs policy and service overall. So I think we would like to support that in terms of looking at new ideas, potentially testing different approaches across associations, sharing that learning, and helping our members to build the service back better.
One very quick point: trades on the Dolphin Index very often score less positively than other parts of the organisation on the Dolphin Index. So if you think of an organisation has microcultures, and very often trades may have the least, may still be positive, but it's the least positive. And so a really interesting question is, if we can change the culture of the organisation so people feel more crazy about work, if we can make trades even more excited and engaged in work, they will have that impact on the customer so that they actually come across as even more engaged, more enthusiastic, and so on. And of course, what's so interesting and important about trades is that very often it's the only person I ever meet. And so actually having that person as a positive role model with representing the best culture is really important. So I know there are a number of housing associations in the UK that want to look at the repairs issue, but also how do we make sure that trades are in peak Dolphin form, so that when they're out there, they ensure, which I'm sure many of them do and most do, are giving an even more positive, proactive, engaging service.
Great, thanks, Mark. We've got another question here around opportunities for tenants to get involved. So could tenant groups engage and learn from others and even across countries with the support of housing associations opening up their horizons?
Fantastic. Again, Shane, what a dinosaur I am. Two things about tenants. Nothing better than having actual customers in your ideas into action system. So I've always said we ought to have customers in residence, like thinkers in residence, to remind us all the time of, are we really into the world, the mind and heart of the customer? So having them in as part of the ideas system, what I call the Eureka Net, would be a fantastic idea. The other idea that we're discussing with the very Dolphin Andrew Van Dorn, the chief exec of HAT, is can we as housing associations not only positively impact the local communities so it becomes more entrepreneurial, there is better economic growth, but if we're going to develop more can-do mindsets within our associations, can we give customers even more can-do mindset? So I, as a customer, would be more likely to think about, shall I get some upskilling? Shall I engage more positively with my community? Because if you look at me as a social housing tenant, usually I'm from less advantaged economic backgrounds. I may more often be from an ethnic minority. And if you look at those two groups, they tend to, because of the experiences that they've gone through, have less of a can-do mindset than other parts of the UK who may have had more privileged backgrounds. And what's very clear is that you can actually help everybody develop more of a can-do mindset. Those of you with children might like to have a look at Carol Dweck's, DWECK work on can-do mindsets, which is very popular in Scottish and UK schools at the moment, about how do you make your child as resilient as possible so as to maximize their potential and possibilities. So two answers there. Getting me, the customer, involved, fantastic. Getting customers in the country involved, fantastic. Getting customers around the world, fantastic. And along with the help of SFHA and HACT, we want to see if we can engage with a number of housing associations who want to see if they can drive even more can-do customers. And thanks to Helen Forsyth, the Chief Exec of Berwickshire Housing, for planting that idea some time ago.
Great, thank you, Mark. So just before we round up, I think it'd be useful to summarise next steps and how the folk here can get involved moving forward. So Mark, you talked about the Big Learn. So that's a programme which SFHA members will be able to get involved in, using the Dolphin Index and using focus groups, getting staff involved and potentially tenants, and doing some work across the sector and bringing that learning together. So that's something that we'll look at towards the end of the year, and we'll invite you to get involved in that. So look out for that. But in the very short term, in terms of the Big Think, I really think now is as good a time, or there's no better time than now for us to be experimenting. We need to be sharing our learning and rethinking how we restart services. So the repairs question being a great example of that. So SFHA is creating an online space. You talked about a EurekaNet, Mark, so we're still, so any ideas on what we should call it, but it'll be an online space where you'll be able to share your current practice, what you're doing just now, and find out what others are doing. So it'll be dynamic, and we'll build on that over time as more information becomes available. So opportunity for shared learning, but also for imagination as well. So if you have key problems or challenges or ideas, you can also share them on that space as well. And so that will be a resource that's for you, and we'll also, SFHA along with other partners, be looking at the ideas that come forward and helping you, giving you some support in terms of taking those ideas forward. And we might have a few associations that want to test a particular idea, so we maybe have 4 or 5 organisations doing it, so we've got 5 for the price of 1 in terms of the experience and moving that forward. So that will be launched within the next couple of weeks, so please look out for that on SFHA's website, through our newsletter and through social media as well, or indeed get in touch with myself or any of the team to find out more about that. And when will it be online? So we're hoping it's going to be online within the next couple of weeks, so very soon. So I think now is the time for us to all be sharing what we're doing, and really practical things, as well as any ideas for the future linked to problems. So Mark, have you got anything else to say in terms of rounding up before we say bye-bye to folks for today?
Simply again to say thank you to the Dolphins at SFHA and all the Dolphins listening. And you are the advance guard. You are the accelerators. You're the ones that are going to now start to plant the spark. And together, you are already very good, but I think we can become even more extraordinary. And thank you from the Dino. And when you meet me, I could do with some of your Dolphin-esque qualities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. So again, you've got the contact details for Mark. The slide will be on our website along with the full webinar if you'd like to share it with any of your colleagues. Any suggestions for future webinars are very welcome as well, and the schedule for our webinars is on SFHA's website. So thank you so much, Mark, for a fantastic session today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And thanks to everybody that's joined for your time. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we look forward to welcoming you for a future webinar soon. Thank you, everyone. Take care, keep safe. Bye-bye.